The rain hammered against the coffee shop windows as evening descended upon the city. Elena Sterling sat motionless in her wheelchair, her 7-month pregnant belly prominent beneath her soaked coat. At 26, her once bright eyes now stared hollowly at the letter bearing her father's signature. Richard Sterling's words blurred through her tears. Daniel Carter pushed through the door, his janitor's uniform damp from the downpour. His gaze found her immediately. "Are you okay?" he asked gently, his voice cutting through her despair. Elena Sterling had once been the golden daughter of one of America's most powerful mayors. Richard Sterling had built his political legacy from nothing, transforming a small local movement in his garage into a powerful political machine that dominated 3 sectors of public life. The political office occupied 40 floors of prime city real estate, its influence reaching across 6 continents. After his wife Margaret died of a sudden heart attack when Elena was 15, Richard buried himself deeper in city council reports and public forums, believing that public success and political wealth would somehow fill the void her death had carved into their family. Elena understood his grief because she felt it too, the absence of her mother like a phantom limb that ached in quiet moments. She threw herself into her studies at Yale with the same single-minded determination, graduating summa cum laude in public administration with a minor in international relations. Every summer was spent interning at the mayor's office, shadowing political leaders, learning public policy, understanding community dynamics, preparing to inherit a political legacy. She was being groomed from birth to carry on the Sterling name, her face already familiar to party members who saw her as Richard's natural successor. Then came the accident 2 years ago on Interstate 95. It was a rainy November evening, much like this one. A drunk driver in a pickup truck ran a red light at 70 miles per hour, T-boning Elena's Mercedes and crushing it against a concrete barrier. The paramedics used the jaws of life to extract her from the wreckage. 11 hours of surgery saved her life, but the damage to her spinal cord was complete and irreversible. L2 and L3 vertebrae shattered beyond repair. Paralyzed from the waist down at 24, Elena spent 6 months in rehabilitation learning to navigate the world from a wheelchair. Richard hired the best specialists from Johns Hopkins Mayo Clinic, even flew in experts from Switzerland. He bought her the most advanced wheelchair money could buy. Carbon fiber frame, smart technology, custom modifications that cost more than most people's cars. The entire Sterling mansion was renovated for accessibility ramps installed, doorways widened and elevator added, bathrooms rebuilt. But he couldn't hide his disappointment when party members whispered about succession plans, questioning whether someone in a wheelchair could command respect in political negotiations, whether she could project the strength needed to lead. At a charity gala 8 months ago for the Children's Hospital, where Margaret had volunteered for 15 years, Elena met Adrienne Miller. He approached her during the silent auction, commenting on her aggressive bidding strategy for a Monet reproduction, 30 years old with perfectly styled dark hair that never seemed out of place. Ocean blue eyes that seemed to see into her soul in designer suits that cost more than most people's monthly salaries. Adrienne seemed to see past her wheelchair. Where others saw limitation, he claimed to see strength. He pursued her relentlessly over the following weeks, sending exotic orchids to her physical therapy sessions every Tuesday and Thursday morning, showing up at the adapted swimming pool where she did her exercises, learning about her favorite authors, and surprising her with first edition Hemingways and Fitzgeralds. He attended every city public event, always finding reasons to be near her, to offer assistance she didn't need but appreciated anyway. Against her better judgment, and despite her father's initial warnings about Adrienne's reputation as a political climber, Elena fell deeply and completely in love. When she discovered she was pregnant after weeks of morning sickness she'd attributed to stress, Adrienne held her as she cried, promised marriage, painted pictures of their future. A spring wedding at his family's vineyard in Napa Valley, a nursery overlooking Central Park, private schools, family vacations to Europe. He spoke of raising their child to appreciate both public service and art, to be compassionate and strong, but promises Elena was learning the hard way meant nothing to men like Adrienne Miller. Richard discovered the pregnancy during their monthly family dinner, a tradition he'd maintained despite rarely being emotionally present. Elena couldn't hide her morning sickness any longer, rushing to the bathroom twice during the appetizer course. Returning pale and shaking, His face transformed from confusion to understanding, to fury, to something far worse. Shame mixed with visceral disgust. The daughter he'd once proudly introduced at public forums, whose intelligence he'd bragged about to political rivals, was now unmarried, pregnant, and paralyzed. In his warped perspective, she'd become everything the mayor's office shouldn't represent. The conversation afterward was brutal. "You're pregnant," he stated, not asked, his voice cold as winter steel. Elena nodded, her hand protectively over her belly. "Adrian and I are getting married. We're in love." Richard's laugh was bitter enough to curdle milk. "Love? You think that opportunist loves anything besides political power and status? His father's political career went bankrupt 2 years ago. He's been circling the mayor's office like a vulture, and you were stupid enough to let him in." The real confrontation happened on a Thursday evening, 3 days after the disastrous dinner. Richard summoned Elena to his mahogany-paneled study, where he'd made major city initiatives and destroyed political rivals with a single phone call. The oil paintings of previous Sterling mayors seemed to glare down at Elena as she wheeled herself in, their eyes following her with disapproval. Richard stood behind his massive desk like a general preparing for war, his Italian suit impeccable despite the late hour, his expression carved from stone. "How could you be so irresponsible?" His voice carried the same tone he used when firing officials who'd failed to deliver on public promises. 26 years of preparation, the best education money could buy. And you throw it all away for what? A few months of passion with a man who's obviously using you. Elena gripped her wheelchair's armrests until her knuckles turned white, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I'm in love, Dad. Adrian and I are getting married next spring. This baby is wanted and loved, which is more than I've felt growing up in this museum you call a home." Richard's face darkened at the insult. "Adrian Miller, that opportunist who's been sniffing around our political rivals like a dog in heat. His last 3 relationships were with political heirs and officials' daughters. You think you're special? You think he sees past the Sterling name?" The words stung because Elena had started wondering the same thing. Adrian's calls had grown infrequent over the past month, always claiming work obligations. His visits were shorter, often ending with carefully casual questions about the city's expansion plans or her father's strategies for international relations. He'd forgotten her birthday last week, sending a generic bouquet with a card his secretary had clearly signed. "You don't know him like I do," she insisted, though her voice wavered with growing doubt. "He sees me as more than just my wheelchair or my last name. He makes me feel whole again." Richard pulled out his phone, swiping through photos from a gossip blog that specialized in destroying reputations for profit. Elena at a modest restaurant in Queens she'd thought was safe from prying eyes. Her pregnancy obvious beneath a simple dress she'd bought off the rack. The headline reading "The Sterling Heir's Secret Shame, Mayor's Daughter Breeding Out of Wedlock." Below were hundreds of comments. So cruel, Elena stopped reading. After the first few, comparing her to a beached whale, "You're destroying everything I built," Richard said coldly, his voice like ice cracking on a frozen lake. "The city council is already questioning my judgment for keeping you as political heir after your accident. 3 major donors called this morning, threatening to pull out. Poll numbers dropped 3% in 6 hours because of these photos. Our political rivals are laughing at us, calling the mayor's office weak, saying, 'I've lost control of my own family.'" Elena felt tears burning her eyes but refused to let them fall. "I'm your daughter, not a political asset or a PR strategy. Mom would be disgusted by what you've become. You were my successor." Richard corrected, refilling his glass with 40-year-old scotch that cost more than most people's rent. "Now you're a liability that threatens 40 years of building this political legacy. Your mother understood sacrifice for the greater good. She gave up her career to support mine. She gave up her career because you demanded it," Lena shot back, and it killed her. The stress of being your perfect political wife gave her that heart attack. The silence stretched between them like a chasm impossible to bridge. Finally, Richard opened his desk drawer, pulling out documents his team of lawyers had prepared that afternoon. "Sign these. You'll receive a settlement of $500,000, enough to live quietly somewhere far from here, Europe perhaps, where the scandal won't follow." In exchange, you'll relinquish all claims to the mayor's office, surrender your council position effective immediately, and have no further contact with our political associates or constituents. You'll also sign a non-disclosure agreement about city operations. Elena stared at the papers, recognizing the legal language that meant complete severance from everything she'd known. You're disowning me, your only child. The daughter mom died believing you'd protect. Richard's jaw clenched at the mention of Margaret. Your mother understood that public service comes first. It's what ensures our family's legacy for generations. What family? Elena asked bitterly. The one you're destroying right now, the one you destroyed when you spread your legs for the first man who pretended to care, Richard snapped, the vulgarity shocking them both. You have 48 hours to decide, he continued, recovering his composure. If you refuse, you leave with nothing but the clothes on your back. Your credit cards are already frozen. The apartment in your name has been transferred back to the city. Your car has been repossessed. Choose wisely. That night, Elena packed what she could carry in 2 suitcases and a duffel bag. Her hands shook as she folded clothes, choosing practical items over designer pieces. She'd saved $3,000 in cash hidden in her mother's old jewelry box behind the pearls Margaret had worn on her wedding day. As rain began falling, matching the tears she could no longer hold back, she wheeled herself out of the 20-room mansion where she'd taken her first steps, spoken her first words, celebrated birthdays, and mourned her mother. The security guard at the gate wouldn't meet her eyes as she passed, already informed of her new status as persona non grata. Daniel Carter was finishing his 10-hour shift at the Bentwood office complex, his back aching from mopping 3 floors and cleaning 47 bathrooms. When he saw her through the sheets of rain, the coffee shop was closed, its neon sign dark, but Elena sat under the small awning, trying futilely to escape the downpour. Her expensive clothes were soaked through, her blonde hair plastered to her face like seaweed, mascara running in dark rivers down her cheeks. She looked nothing like the confident woman he'd seen in Forbes magazine just 6 months ago, profiled as the future of the city. Daniel had noticed her earlier that week, entering the coffee shop each afternoon around 3, ordering chamomile tea she barely touched, staring at her phone as if willing it to ring. The barista, Jenny, had mentioned she'd been coming for days, always alone, always sad, barely speaking except to order. Tonight was different. Tonight she looked completely broken, like someone who'd lost everything that mattered and had no idea how to continue breathing. Miss, you'll catch pneumonia out here, Daniel said, approaching slowly so as not to startle her. The last thing she needed was another shock to her system. Elena looked up, startled by the kindness in his voice after days of harsh words and rejection. The shop's closed. I'm just waiting for the rain to stop. This storm's supposed to last all night, according to the weather service, Daniel said, checking his phone. Are you waiting for someone to pick you up? I could wait with you if you'd like. I have nowhere to go, she admitted quietly, her voice barely audible over the rain hammering the pavement. I used to have a driver. I used to have a lot of things. Daniel glanced at her luggage, Louis Vuitton pieces. He recognized from magazines now soaked and mud-splattered. He noticed her wheelchair, a high-tech model that probably cost more than he made in 6 months. Her pregnancy was obvious, despite her loose sweater. His own struggles as a single father had taught him to recognize desperation in all its forms. He'd worn that same expression after Sarah's funeral, standing in their empty apartment, wondering how he'd raise Ethan alone. Look, I know this sounds crazy and you have absolutely no reason to trust me, but my apartment's just 3 blocks away on Riverside. You could dry off, warm up, maybe eat something, and figure out your next move. No strings, no expectations, just human kindness. Elena studied him carefully, cataloging details. His uniform was worn, but meticulously clean. Name tag reading Daniel C. His face was weathered but kind, laugh lines around brown eyes that held a sadness matching her own. His hands were calloused from work, but gentle looking. I don't even know you. You could be anyone, a serial killer, a kidnapper. Daniel Carter, he said, pulling out his driver's license and work ID to show her. I'm the night janitor here. Been working this building for 4 years since my wife passed. My son Ethan and I live in the Riverside Apartments Unit 312. You can call the building Super Mrs. Chen to verify if you want. She'll vouch for me. Why would you help a stranger? Elena asked, suspicious after Adrian's calculated betrayal. Especially one who's clearly a disaster. Daniel thought of his wife, Sarah, how she died 3 years ago from pancreatic cancer that took her in 4 months, leaving him to raise Ethan alone with no family support. His parents were gone. Sarah's family lived in Korea and barely knew Ethan existed. Because sometimes strangers are just friends waiting to happen, he said, repeating what Sarah used to say at the community center where she'd volunteered teaching English to immigrants. And because I know what it's like to feel like you're drowning with no life preserver in sight. After my wife died, strangers kept me and my son afloat. This is me paying it forward. The rain intensified, turning the streets into rivers. Lightning flashed, illuminating Elena's exhausted face. Her phone, dead from moisture damage, offered no salvation. Adrian hadn't returned her 37 calls or 18 increasingly desperate text messages. Her father's deadline loomed like an executioner's axe. She had no other options. No friends who weren't connected to the mayor's office. No family besides Richard. Okay, she whispered, her pride crumbling like wet tissue paper. Just for tonight, I'll pay you for the trouble. Daniel shook his head. No payment needed. Let's just get you somewhere warm and dry. He helped her navigate the broken sidewalks, pushing her chair when the wheels stuck in puddles and debris, holding his own umbrella over her while getting thoroughly soaked himself. His apartment building was old, built in the 1960s. The elevator creaky and slow, graffiti on the walls, but when he opened his door, warmth and light, and the smell of home flooded out. The apartment was small, but meticulously clean and organized. 900 square foot that held an entire life. Crayon drawings covered the refrigerator in overlapping layers of childhood creativity. Dinosaurs, robots, a family of 3, with one figure surrounded by hearts and labeled Mommy in Heaven. Toy robots lined the windowsill like centuries guarding against sadness. A New England Patriots blanket draped the worn couch that had seen better decades. Family photos covered one wall. A beautiful Korean woman with kind eyes appearing in most of them. Her smile radiant, even in casual snapshots. Dad? A young boy peered from behind a bedroom door, wearing dinosaur pajamas that were slightly too small. Who's the lady? Is she from your work? This is Elena, Daniel said carefully, hanging up his soaked jacket. She needs our help tonight. Remember what we talked about being kind to people who are having a hard time. Ethan nodded solemnly, then brightened with 8-year-old enthusiasm. Like when Mrs. Rodriguez needed help with groceries after her surgery, or when Tommy's family needed food after his dad lost his job, or when Mr. Park couldn't pay rent and we shared our dinners. Exactly like that, Daniel smiled, ruffling his son's dark hair. Can you get the extra blankets from the hall closet? The warm ones Grandma Sarah made. He grabbed clean towels from the bathroom, then hesitated at the doorway. The bathroom door is narrow and there's a lip at the entrance. It's not really wheelchair accessible, but I can help if you're comfortable with that. I helped my mom before she passed, so I know how to be respectful and maintain dignity. Elena felt embarrassed, but grateful for his matter-of-fact approach. Thank you. I'm usually more independent, but everything's been so hard lately. I feel like I'm falling apart at the seams. No shame in needing help, Daniel said simply. We all do sometimes. While Elena dried off in the bathroom with Daniel's respectful assistance, he kept his eyes averted, only helping where she specifically asked. Ethan prepared his presentation with the seriousness of a UN ambassador. When she emerged wearing dry clothes, Daniel had found Sarah's old maternity wear he'd kept in storage for reasons he couldn't explain. Ethan was waiting with hot chocolate made from scratch and a 1,000-piece puzzle spread across the coffee table. Do you like dinosaurs? He asked seriously, as if this was the most important question in the world. I used to love them when I was young, Elena said, remembering her childhood obsession. The museum trips with her mother before Margaret got too busy being Mrs. Mayor. I had a whole collection of fossils my mom helped me find. Then you'll love this puzzle. It's a brachiosaurus. Dad says they were gentle giants who only ate plants and protected their babies. They were so tall they could eat leaves other dinosaurs couldn't reach. Kind of like how Dad gets stuff from high shelves for Mrs. Rodriguez. As Ethan explained each dinosaur in his extensive collection, with the expertise of a tiny paleontologist, complete with pronunciation guides and fun facts, Elena felt something shift inside her chest. This tiny apartment, with its cramped rooms and dated appliances, held more genuine warmth than her father's mansion ever had. Daniel prepared simple grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, apologizing for the modest meal. We usually have more variety, but I haven't gotten to the grocery store this week. Ethan's been home with a cold, and I didn't want to drag him out. It's perfect, Elena said, meaning it completely. She couldn't remember the last time someone had cooked for her without being paid to do so. My mom used to make this when I was sick, before she got too busy, before the political career consumed everything. That night, sleeping on the couch that pulled out into a surprisingly comfortable bed while rain drummed against the windows, Elena made a decision. She wouldn't sign her father's papers. She'd rather have nothing than sell her soul for his power. She'd survived the accident. She'd survived this too. In the morning, Daniel made pancakes from his grandmother's recipe while Ethan showed Elena his artwork, each drawing accompanied by an elaborate story. "This one's our family before," he said, pointing to three figures holding hands under a rainbow. "But Mommy got sick and became an angel, so now she watches from the clouds. See, that's her face in the sun." Elena touched the drawing gently, feeling tears threaten. "She's absolutely beautiful. You're very talented, Ethan." "Dad says she sends us signs that she's still around," Ethan explained, matter-of-factly. "Like when we see cardinals, those were her favorite birds, or when we find lucky pennies. Maybe she sent you here because you needed us and we needed you." Daniel blushed furiously, nearly dropping the spatula. "Ethan, that's not—" "We can't assume. Elena has her own life." "It's okay," Elena interrupted, wiping her eyes. "Maybe she did. I'd like to think so. I'd like to think someone up there is looking out for all of us." Over the following days, an unexpected routine developed that felt more natural than Elena's old life ever had. Daniel worked nights from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., coming home exhausted, but always with a smile for his son. Elena watched Ethan after school, wheeling herself to the bus stop to meet him, helping with homework while teaching him card games her grandfather had taught her before he died. She contributed what money she had for groceries, despite Daniel's protests, and learned to cook simple meals from YouTube videos. Determined to be useful to earn her place in their small sanctuary, 2 weeks into their arrangement, disaster struck. The media vultures found her like they always did, drawn to scandal like flies to carrion. Photographers clustered outside the building like a pack of hungry wolves, capturing Daniel helping Elena into his beat-up Toyota Corolla with 200,000 miles on the odometer. The headlines were vicious and cruel, designed to humiliate. "Mayor's heir shacks up with janitor from riches to rags. Elena's rebound." "Billionaire's daughter chooses mop boy over fortune." And worst of all, crippled heir trades down. The comments online were even worse, dissecting her appearance, her wheelchair, her pregnancy, Daniel's obvious poverty. Someone had even taken photos of Ethan, though Daniel threatened legal action to have them removed. The building's residents whispered when she passed, some sympathetic, others clearly judging. Mrs. Chen, the super, remained kind, but Elena heard her telling another tenant that the attention was bad for the building's reputation. Richard's chief political strategist arrived that afternoon while Daniel was at work, his Mercedes S-Class looking absurdly out of place, parked between a rusted pickup and a Honda with a missing bumper. Elena recognized Harrison Walsh, her father's chief political strategist for 20 years, a man who'd bounced her on his knee as a child, and now looked at her like something he'd scrape off his Italian leather shoes. "Miss Sterling," he said, his tone making it clear she no longer deserved the family name, looking around the modest apartment with barely concealed disdain. His gaze lingered on the water stain on the ceiling, the cramped quarters, the obvious poverty. "Your father is concerned about your recent choices." "His concern is touching," Elena said dryly, "considering he threw me out like yesterday's garbage." "He's willing to increase the settlement to $1 million, Harrison said, placing a Hermes briefcase on the scarred coffee table. "The conditions remain the same with the addition that you cease this transparent attempt to embarrass him by living with someone so far beneath your station. This janitor you have latched onto, it's unseemly. People are talking. The city council is questioning your father's judgment even more now." Elena felt rage building like a tsunami. Daniel Carter is worth 10 of my father and 100 of you. Is he worth your child's future? Harrison asked pointedly, adjusting his gold cufflinks that cost more than Daniel made in a month. Think about what you're doing, Miss Sterling. No private schools, no Ivy League legacy admission, no trust fund, no opportunities, no connections. Your child will grow up in poverty, all because of your pride. Is that really what your mother would want? For her grandchild to suffer because you're too stubborn to see reason? The mention of her mother was a calculated cruelty. After he left, Elena sobbed until she could barely breathe, her chest heaving with the weight of her failures. When Daniel returned home at 7:30, exhausted from covering an extra shift, he found her packing with shaking hands. I'm destroying your life, she said, unable to meet his eyes. The photographers, the lawyers, the neighbors whispering and pointing. Other kids are bullying Ethan at school because of me. They're calling him names, saying his dad is sleeping with them for money. Daniel knelt beside her wheelchair, gently taking her trembling hands in his callous ones. You know what Ethan told me yesterday? He said, you're the best thing that happened to us since his mom died. And he's absolutely right. But I'm a burden, Elena protested, tears streaming down her face. I can't even contribute properly. I can't work. I'm pregnant with another man's child. Paralyzed, disowned, followed by scandal everywhere I go. What could you possibly see in me? Daniel cupped her face gently, his thumbs wiping away her tears. I see someone who reads stories with different voices to make my son laugh until his sides hurt. Someone who taught him fractions when I couldn't figure out Common Core math. Someone who makes this apartment feel like a home again, instead of just a place where we exist between Sarah's death and whatever comes next. I see someone I'm falling in love with. Their eyes met, and Elena saw truth there, not calculation. But Adrian, she started. Adrian's a fool and a criminal, Daniel said firmly. Any man who could walk away from you doesn't deserve to breathe the same air as you. That evening, needing closure, Elena called Adrian one last time. He answered on the 15th ring, clearly drunk, music pounding in the background. Elena, for Christ's sake, stop calling. It's over. It was over the moment your daddy cut you off. I'm pregnant with your child, she said steadily. You can't just walk away from that responsibility. So you claim, Adrian replied coldly, the music suddenly muting. Look, it was fun while it lasted, but let's be realistic here. Your father cut you off completely. You're paralyzed probably forever. What kind of future could we possibly have? I've got a reputation to maintain, a career to build. Being saddled with a crippled baby mama isn't part of my 5-year plan. The cruelty of his words cut deep, but also freed her. You said you loved me. You said my wheelchair didn't matter. Adrian laughed ugly and mean. I loved the Sterling name and the doors it opened. I loved the insider information you gave me about your father's deals. Without that, you're just another girl in a wheelchair. And frankly, not worth the trouble. Don't contact me again. My lawyer will send papers terminating parental rights. I want nothing to do with you or the brat. He hung up. Elena stared at the phone, then at Daniel reading to Ethan on the couch, doing all the voices for Harry Potter, making his son giggle. Real love, she realized with crystal clarity, looked nothing like Adrian's promises and everything like this. Patience, kindness, dinosaur puzzles, bedtime stories, and choosing to stay when leaving would be easier. 3 days later, Daniel overheard a conversation that changed everything. He was cleaning the executive floor of a rival political campaign's headquarters when Adrian's voice drifted from a conference room. The door was slightly ajar, and Daniel could see Adrian with several strategists through the gap, all of them drinking expensive whiskey and laughing. The old fool never suspected anything, Adrian boasted, loosening his tie. His precious daughter was so desperate for attention after that accident. She told me everything. The city's expansion plans, their weaknesses in cybersecurity, the problems with their public contracts, even Richard's personal passwords. I had access to his home computer through her laptop. She gave me everything on a silver platter. Daniel pulled out his phone, carefully recording everything. His military training from 6 years in the Army, helping him remain invisible. Adrian detailed how he targeted Elena, specifically on orders from Marcus Vance, the rival campaign's leader. Vance identified her as the weak link after the accident, vulnerable, desperate for validation, isolated from her father. It was like taking candy from a baby, a paralyzed baby, he added, making the others laugh. The pregnancy was unfortunate timing, Adrian continued, pouring another drink. But it actually worked in our favor. Richard's so disgusted with his crippled daughter having a bastard child. He's barely functioning. The mayor's approval rating is down 12% this month alone. We'll initiate the hostile campaign next quarter when they're at their weakest. Another strategist asked, "What about the girl? Could she expose us?" Adrian waved dismissively. "She's broke, living with some janitor in a slum about to pop out a kid. Who'd believe her? Besides, I've got enough fabricated evidence to make her look like a bitter ex trying to get revenge. We're untouchable." Daniel's hands shook with rage. Elena had been systematically destroyed by calculated cruelty. He wanted to burst in and beat Adrian senseless, but revenge required patience and evidence. When he returned home, he found Elena teaching Ethan to paint with watercolors, her smile genuine despite everything she'd endured. He couldn't tell her yet, not without proof that would stand up in court, but he'd make this right if it killed him. Over the following week, Daniel became a detective. He traded shifts with coworkers to access different floors at different times, photographed documents left carelessly on printers, dug through trash for discarded papers, and even retrieved Adrian's discarded hard drive from the electronics recycling bin. Elena noticed his exhaustion. "You're working too hard," she said one evening, massaging his shoulders while Ethan did homework. "Let me help somehow. I feel useless just sitting here." "You are helping," Daniel said, watching her braid Ethan's hair for picture day with infinite patience. "More than you could possibly know. You've given us hope again." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Ethan had accompanied Daniel to work on a Saturday when the babysitter canceled, playing quietly while Daniel cleaned. The boy found papers that had fallen behind a filing cabinet, internal rival campaign emails discussing Operation Sterling Takedown, with detailed timelines, payment structures, and Adrian's role. "Dad, is this important?" Ethan asked, holding up the crumpled papers. Daniel read them, his heart racing. They outlined the entire conspiracy, including Adrian's monthly payments of $50,000 and the planned political raids scheduled for next month. But they needed more concrete evidence to take to authorities. Elena still had one friend at the mayor's office, her former assistant, Jennifer Chen, who'd started as an intern when Elena was learning the public service business. Elena called her, explaining everything that had happened. Jennifer was horrified. "I knew Adrian was suspicious. He kept asking about your father's schedule, his passwords, even what medications he took. He said it was because he wanted to be a good son-in-law. He was always snooping around your office when you were in meetings." "Oh, Elena, I'm so sorry. We all should have seen it." Jennifer agreed to help, using her access to retrieve Adrian's old emails to Elena, cross-referencing dates with the rival campaign's strategic moves. The pattern was undeniable. Every piece of inside information Elena had inadvertently shared during their relationship had been weaponized against the mayor's office. Jennifer also discovered something else. Adrian was already engaged to Marcus Vance's daughter, had been the entire time he was pursuing Elena. The engagement had been kept secret for strategic reasons. The investigation intensified over 3 weeks of careful planning and dangerous execution. Daniel used his janitor's access to map the rival campaign's security protocols, memorizing guard rotations and camera blind spots. Elena decoded the financial data Jennifer smuggled out on encrypted flash drives, her public administration training invaluable. They worked after Ethan's bedtime, spreading documents across the kitchen table like generals planning a campaign. Elena identified patterns Daniel would have missed: shell companies, offshore accounts, money laundering through Delaware corporations. "This transaction here," Elena pointed out, tracing a complex trail. "That's how they're hiding Adrian's payments, through 3 shell companies, then to the Caymans, then back as consulting fees. It's brilliant but traceable, if you know what to look for." Daniel marveled at her expertise. "You really were going to run the city. You'd have been brilliant at it." In another life, Elena said sadly, her hand moving to her belly where the baby kicked. Maybe in this life too, Daniel suggested. Your father needs to know the truth. Elena shook her head. He won't listen to me. He thinks I'm a failure. Then we make him listen, Daniel said with determination. Their first attempt nearly ended in disaster. Daniel tried to access the rival campaign's secure server, but triggered an alarm. Security guards flooded the floor within minutes. He hid in a supply closet for 3 hours, barely breathing, texting Elena to keep her calm. I'm fine, just playing hide and seek with security, he wrote. That's not funny, she replied. You have a son to come home to, and me. We need you safe. The "we need you" made his heart race more than the close call. Their second attempt was smarter. Jennifer arranged a meeting between Elena and Thomas Westbrook, a sympathetic city council member, but he backed out at the last minute, scared of Richard's wrath. We're running out of time, Elena said urgently. I'm due in 5 weeks. The rival campaign's takeover is next month. Daniel made a decision. Then we confront Adrian directly. Elena grabbed his arm. That's dangerous. He's desperate now. So are we, Daniel said, but we're also right. The plan was simple, but risky. Daniel would confront Adrian in the campaign headquarters parking garage at 2 a.m. when security was minimal. Elena would wait in the car with the engine running, ready to call police if needed. But plans, like promises, often crumble under pressure. Adrian arrived early with 2 security guards, tipped off by someone. Daniel's heart sank until he heard a familiar voice. Adrian Miller. Richard Sterling emerged from behind a concrete pillar, flanked by his own security team. We need to talk. Elena gasped from the car. Her father looked older, grayer, diminished, but his presence still commanded attention. About what? Adrian asked nervously, his hand moving toward his jacket. About how you seduced my daughter for political espionage, Richard said coldly. Daniel stepped forward, holding up the evidence. Mr. Sterling, I have proof of everything. What followed was chaos. Adrian tried to run, but security blocked him. Cornered. He pulled a gun from his jacket. You don't understand, he shouted, waving it wildly. Marcus Vance owns judges, politicians, half the police force. If I don't deliver, the mayor's office, I'm dead. Daniel moved instinctively between the gun and the car where Elena waited. Put it down, Adrian. This won't solve anything. You destroyed my daughter for money. Richard's voice broke with rage and grief. Adrian laughed bitterly. She was an assignment. The pregnancy complicated things. Makes her damaged goods now, doesn't it, Richard? The cruelty sparked something primal in Daniel. He started forward, but Elena's voice stopped everyone. She'd gotten out of the car, wheeling herself into view with remarkable calm. Adrian, look at me. Her voice was steady, commanding. You think you broke me? You think being paralyzed makes me weak? I survived an accident that should have killed me. I'm carrying a child despite everything. I found real love with a man who sees my worth beyond my name or my legs. You didn't break me. You freed me from a shallow life of lies. Adrian's hands shook. Shut up. The FBI is already investigating Vance's campaign. Elena revealed what Jennifer had discovered. Marcus Vance was arrested this morning for insider trading and racketeering. You're alone. The sirens were audible now. Adrian looked around wildly, then dropped the gun and ran. Security tackled him before he reached the exit. As police led him away, he screamed about conspiracies, but the evidence was overwhelming. Richard approached Elena slowly. How long have you known? 3 weeks, Elena said. We've been gathering evidence to save your political career. Richard looked at Daniel. You did this for her? We did it together, Daniel corrected. Your daughter's brilliant, Mr. Sterling. You just stopped seeing it when she stopped walking. Richard's shoulders sagged. Elena, I was so wrong. Can you forgive me? Elena felt tears coming. I don't know, Dad. You abandoned me when I needed you most. I know, Richard said. I was scared. When your mother died, I promised to protect you. Instead, I became the threat she would have fought. The conversation was interrupted by Elena, gasping in pain. The stress she managed. The baby's coming now. The hospital room was controlled chaos. Elena was only 35 weeks pregnant. the baby arriving 5 weeks early from stress. Daniel held her hand while she crushed his fingers during contractions. Richard paced the hallway, forbidden from entering by Elena, but unable to leave. Ethan stayed with Mrs. Rodriguez, drawing pictures and praying. "You're doing amazing," Daniel whispered between contractions. "I'm scared," Elena admitted. "What if something's wrong? What if I can't be a good mother from a wheelchair?" "You're already a wonderful mother to Ethan," Daniel reminded her. "This baby is lucky to have you." The delivery was complicated by Elena's paralysis, requiring careful monitoring. For 7 hours, she labored with Daniel, never leaving her side. Finally, at 2:43 a.m., a healthy baby boy entered the world. "He's perfect," the doctor announced. "Small at 5 pounds, but strong." Elena sobbed as they placed him on her chest. "Hello, little one. I'm your mama." Daniel touched the baby's tiny hand. "He has your eyes and your determination," Elena said. "You saved us both." "You saved yourself," Daniel corrected. "I just reminded you how strong you are." Richard knocked tentatively. "May I?" Elena nodded, exhausted. Her father entered slowly, tears flowing at the sight of his grandson. "He's beautiful. What's his name?" Elena looked at Daniel, who nodded. "Thomas Daniel Sterling," she said, "after both his grandfathers." Richard's composure cracked completely. "My father would have been honored." The baby grasped Richard's finger with surprising strength. "I'll do better," Richard promised, "for all of you." Over the following days, the hospital room became a gathering place. Jennifer brought balloons. Mrs. Rodriguez brought tamales. Ethan brought his dinosaur collection. "He needs to know about T-Rex first," Ethan explained seriously. The media attention shifted from scandal to redemption. Adrian's arrest exposed Vance's corruption, saving the mayor's office. But in the hospital room, none of that mattered. What mattered was Elena learning to breastfeed, Ethan singing lullabies, and a new family taking shape. 2 months after Thomas's birth, spring arrived in full bloom. The small backyard of Daniel's apartment building had been transformed through Richard's financing. And Daniel's labor, not charity, but a grandfather wanting safe spaces for his grandsons. A ramp led to raised garden beds where Elena grew vegetables with Ethan's help. "The tomatoes are huge," Ethan announced, Thomas babbling agreement from his bouncer. Elena laughed, soil on her hands, feeling more accomplished than any initiative ever made her feel. Daniel was building a sandbox, his shirt off in the warm sun. Elena watched him work, still amazed this man had chosen them. "Stop staring at my date," Ethan teased. "That's because I love him," Elena said simply. Ethan considered this. "Does that mean you'll be my mom now?" "Only if you want me to be," Elena said. "I already asked Thomas," Ethan said seriously. "We voted." Daniel dropped his hammer, kneeling beside Elena's chair. "Ethan's been practicing something," he said, pulling out a small velvet box. "Will you marry us?" Ethan asked excitedly. "Dad says you have to marry all of us." Elena looked at the simple ring. Perfect, because it came with love, not lies. "Yes," she said, crying and laughing. "Yes, to all of you." Richard arrived for Sunday dinner carrying legal documents, making Elena a full partner in the new administration. "When you're ready," he said, "the city needs your vision." "I have a new vision now," Elena said, watching Thomas reach for Ethan. "It includes city council meetings and sandboxes." "The best visions do," Richard agreed. As the sun set, they gathered around the picnic table Daniel had built. Elena looked at each face, her father learning to be present, Daniel, her unexpected salvation, Ethan, her bonus son, Thomas, her miracle. Her legs might never work again, but her heart had never been fuller. "You know what I realized?" Elena said, holding Daniel's hand. "I spent so long mourning what I lost, but losing all that led me here." Daniel squeezed her hand. "Where you belong." "Where we all belong," Ethan corrected. The documentary crew captured the moment not for scandal, but because sometimes real life writes the best endings. Elena looked at the camera. "Family isn't about blood or money or ability. Family is about choosing each other again and again, especially when it's hard. Daniel chose me when I had nothing. Ethan chose to share his dad. Thomas chose to arrive perfect, and Dad chose to change. That's our story. The camera pulled back, capturing the scene. A paralyzed woman surrounded by love, building the life she never expected but deserved. Children played, men laughed, and hope bloomed like Elena's tomatoes. Unexpected, resilient, and absolutely thriving.